Well, I think there are going to be some interesting comments down below after this video, because today's topic is going to be slightly polarizing, I think, but it needs to be said. So there is a trend that I am noticing more and more often, whether that's on Instagram or YouTube, all around replicating and purchasing gear made famous by other guitar players, whether that's in the hope that you're going to get close to their tone, or whether you're just a collector with way too much money to burn. Either way, it's something that's becoming more and more popular, and I think it's something that we need to address. So as you would have seen in the thumbnail, John Mayer is a big component of this trend, but he's by no means alone. Every famous guitar player who has a signature sound or is sought after and admired for any particular reason will have aspects about their tone, their rig, that us guitarists are just always going to be interested in. And if anyone has ever said that you'll sound like John Mayer or Joe Bonamassa or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Hendrix if you buy a certain pedal or amp or guitar, then they're just flat out lying to you. If you're a beginner and you're just getting into guitar gear and pedals and amps, this video is to make you more well informed and to potentially save you money buying gear that you might not necessarily need, because you're not informed in how all of this gear affects the sound of the guitar. Now let's take John Mayer as an example, because I did use his face in the thumbnail for this video, and if we look at John Mayer's gear history, we see that there are quite a few staples and there are quite a few key tones that people always try to replicate. There's pretty much any tone on the Continuum album. There's the live tone on Where the Light Is, where John was predominantly using all of his two rocks and dumbles, and all the pedals associated with John Mayer for the majority of his career have either been a Ibanez Tube Screamer, a Marshall Bluesbreaker, or a Klon Centaur. And when anybody ever thinks about John Mayer in terms of lead tones and guitar solos, those are always the pedals that people choose to go for. And thanks to all that hype and to the John Mayer effect, the Ibanez TS10, the Marshall Bluesbreaker, and the Klon Centaur are now astronomically expensive and way more money than they're actually worth. Now, John Mayer has been on the scene for a while. He's been playing guitar for probably the best part of 30 years at this point, and all of these pedals were around when he was coming up. And when he went to buy a Klon Centaur or a TS10 or a Marshall Bluesbreaker, they were probably no more inaccessible than any other pedal that you could buy at the time. And being a guitar player, as we all are, we all like to experiment and pick up new pedals. And I can guarantee that it was probably just a case of those were the pedals around at the time, and John chose them, played them, plugged them in, they sounded great, and he's probably just kept them ever since because, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. At the end of the day, all of these things are just tools. It doesn't really impact how you sound on the guitar, it just impacts how your guitar sounds. The big component for John Mayer's tone is how he plays guitar. It's how he chooses the notes, it's how he composes solos, it's how he attacks the strings. All of this stuff is the reason that John Mayer sounds how he sounds. I've seen loads of clips of John online. There was a clip of him playing at Berklee College of Music in a classroom plugged into a Hot Rod Deluxe, and he sounded like John Mayer. I've seen clips where he's just been invited to join a band on stage and he's plugged into a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe and an Ibanez TS10, and he sounds like John Mayer. So I don't understand why everybody is so fixated on buying the specific piece of gear, the specific amp, or the specific guitar, thinking that that is the recipe, because it really isn't. The only way that you're ever going to sound like a guitar player is if you are that guitar player, right? Now, I'm going to caveat all of this by saying that obviously there is no right and wrong. If you're wanting to recreate John Mayer's rig just because you've got loads of money and you think it's cool and it would be a fun exercise, because no doubt it would be, don't get me wrong, I would love to plug in to a Dumble steel string singer and hit on an Ibanez TS10 with a Klon Centaur, and I would have a great time doing that. But am I going to spend tens of thousands of pounds or dollars recreating that because I think that that's going to get me to sound like John Mayer? Absolutely not. But if this is just something that you're doing for fun, then I absolutely get it. However, the thing that I do have a problem with is when people think that that is the golden ticket to guitar tone, because really tone is in the fingers. And I don't care what anybody says, I definitely, hand on heart, believe that that is the truth. So if you do want to recreate some of these iconic guitar tones, whether that's because you just like the sound of them and you want to recreate them yourself, or as I feel is a better exercise, using the fundamentals of creating that tone to understand why that tone sounds how it sounds, is actually the right way to go about it. So let's take John Mayer's gain stage. He has an Ibanez TS10, which is an overdrive pedal that has loads of mid-range and not very much low end. In fact, most of the low end on a tube screamer is absolutely cut out. And that's why it works so good as a solo boost, because it just gives you all of the frequencies that you need to cut through a mix when you're taking a solo. Then he has his Klon Centaur, which again is very mid-focused, but in a slightly different way. And it works really well as a clean boost or like a first stage overdrive. So the Tube Screamer and the Klon Centaur are a pretty complementary combo. Then if we take the Marshall Bluesbreaker, which was a more transparent overdrive, meaning the frequency response was a lot more flat, no frequencies were dramatically cut or boosted in any way, which again is another nice flavour to have for some other lead tones, because it's all about variety and getting pedals that do a specific role really well. He's also messed around with loads of other overdrive pedals over the years, whether that's the Mesa Boogie Flux Drive, I think it was. There was another pedal that I can't remember the name of, which I will pop up here, which again was on his board during a time that I saw him live. And no matter how many times I've seen John Mayer live, and no matter how many rigs I've seen him play, whether that was his PRS rig or his Dumble rig, I did leave both gigs feeling like, well, it just sounds like John Mayer. There's no noticeable difference in my ears between the different rigs. Because at the end of the day, John is playing guitar for his own enjoyment. He wants it to feel good under his fingers. He wants what he hears back through the monitors to be good. And it's not necessarily about what it sounds like to us. That's not what buying gear is always about. It's often more about how it makes you feel as opposed to how it sounds like, or it at least is for me. All the gear that I've connected with have been things that have made me feel connected to the guitar, and not necessarily because it sounds great coming out of the amp. So having an understanding of how certain pedals feel under the fingers and the frequencies that they exude and how that manifests itself in a mix can then help you make more informed decisions about what gear you resonate with and what you need in order to recreate some of the sounds that you're chasing. Because buying the exact pedal is kind of like having the extra 5% of what makes something special. You see all the Anderson shootouts about Klon Centaurs, and the One Platumnus came out as being the one that sounded most like the Klon. But it's kind of like, well, they all sound so similar. I've seen so many videos of so many, clone type pedals, and it's getting to the point now where they all just sound the same, and it's literally those last percentiles that really make a difference. But are those last percentiles really worth $6,500? Not for me, they're not. So that's my little rant about guitar trends and chasing other people's gear, and why I just don't think there's very much merit in that unless you are purely doing it as a way of just spending some cash and having a bit of fun. But if you're really going after it to try and recreate guitar players' tones, then you're always going to fall short, because you are not that guitar player, and it's more about the feel, and it's more about learning how they play guitar in terms of the inflection that they put on notes and how they attack the strings. That is the key of sounding like a guitar player. It's not about the gear. Now, leave a comment down below and let me know if you agree with me on this. I am absolutely fine if people disagree, because there is no right and wrong. This is purely just my opinion, and it's not to throw shade on anybody who does that. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on this topic. I do think it's a pretty controversial one. I have done a few videos on my channel before breaking down some of John Mayer's iconic tones and trying to get close to them with the gear that I have, which is fairly inexpensive, but because I understand those principles of what the pedals do, can really kind of help get you a lot of the way there. So make sure to go and check out that video, or maybe this video. I don't know how I'm going to lay them out, but if you are interested in this topic and you want to go down the rabbit hole a bit deeper, then these videos might be for you. Anyway, that's my rant over. I don't do ranty videos very often, so thanks for watching and sticking with me if you have. New videos are posted every single Tuesday, so if you do enjoy the channel, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified of when those videos go live. As always guys, thank you for watching, hit the thumbs up button, and I will see you all next week for another video.